And we're live. Hi, everyone. Super excited to be here again. I'm happy to have you join us. And in regular Lagos balance, I hope people do not see the rain today. I'm grateful that even as the numbers are rising with community transmission, we're here, we're healthy, and we still made it to work today. And for our first timers, thank you for joining ProductTank Lagos. We are a community of product managers trying to hone our craft. Our today's event is going to be pretty awesome. I will just go right into it. Starting off, I will introduce what Mind the Product is, and then ProductTank Lagos. Then I'll introduce the speaker. It will talk to us about building evolving products. Then we'll go into a quick question and answer session. Then we'll wrap up and close. ProductTank and Mind the Product are a global professional network for product people all over the world. Mind the Product started in 2010 with like-minded people coming together to say, how can we make these things better? We've been doing product for a while. Are we doing projects? Are we running around like headless chickens? Are we firefighting? What exactly is this thing we're doing? If you recorded successes, share. Let's see how other people can succeed. If you've had failures as well, share. Let's see what we can learn from your failure, what you yourself have learned from it, and how to move on. And that's us right there, Lagos. We're part of a large community of product people all over the world. You are beautiful audience. In Lagos, I think now we're over 3,000 of us in this community. Thank you for staying here with us. And I'd like to tell you guys a couple of ways you can get involved. If you want to speak at any of our ProductTank events, please feel free to reach out to me or the ProductTank team on LinkedIn, our email address, or on Twitter. You can also volunteer to help us host one of our several events, or you can write for Mind the Products. And also joining and being a member of Mind the Product, you get a lot of awesome freebies. You get passes to articles, job posts, and many of the conferences that hold around the world. The next conference for Mind the Product is going to happen in London in October. Because again of the COVID restrictions, is on .com/London. I think around the last 4 or 5 meetups, it's been online. And again, we have over 3,000 members. You are a beautiful audience here with us today. I'd like to introduce Tobi Amira. Tobi is a product manager, a product leader that has been building products for close or even over 10 years. Is currently the vice president at TeamApt, and he's here to talk to us about building evolving products. I'm adding Tobi. Hi, Tobi.
Hi, Zainab.
Yes.
Hi, everyone.
So, those times that we get frustrated, you build something halfway, and one stakeholder is saying, we need to add something, we missed one requirement, and you're already like in version 2 or in phase 2 or something, and you're wondering, who is this guy? Why are you coming now? We built these requirements together, you signed off, we agreed to what we'll build, and then things just start scattering up and down. Tobi is here to clear your doubts. He's done it successfully. He's done it successfully for years. He's about to show us our way around how, even if these requirements change, we should build our products to evolve and be better around the changing requirements. He's going to be speaking to us for about 15 minutes. I will leave you in his hands for a while, and I will be back for a quick question and answer. Please drop your comments. If you're not able to log in here, you can drop your comments on Twitter as well. You can tweet at us at ProductTank, and we will answer your questions once I'm back. All right, Tobi, thank you for earning our invites. Over to you now.
Thank you very much. Um, okay. Trying to share my slides, or will someone do it for me? Sorry, give me a second. Okay. Sorry, I didn't realize I was going to have to do this myself. But yeah, give me a minute. Voila. Okay, so basically today we're going to be talking about building evolving products. It is, I think it was one of the earliest frustrations I had when I became a product manager. And as a product manager, if you are lucky, you would be the one going to do the product research by yourself. But more often than not, there's a business team or a stakeholder or the MD who is going out and coming in and telling you what exactly you need to build. And one of the frustrations I had when I started initially was taking the requirements I had gotten as the law, and then 1 month in, a breaking change will come in from the guy. And unfortunately, those changes are always very, very urgent. And then everybody is on their heels trying to make things work, things that are completely different from, or maybe even just slightly different from what we initially discussed. And so it took me a while to, first of all, accept it as something that is always going to happen. And then secondly, start to build in a way that anticipates it happening and kind of reduces the hassle basically when those changes eventually come. And so I'm going to be sharing a few of the techniques that I use that I also learned from people who were kind enough to teach me. And I'm hoping that everybody will learn at least one thing today. So, I mean, I've basically just gone through this. One of the first things you realize when you enter product is that things are always going to change, and things are changing at sometimes breakneck speed. Somewhere, and you can be tempted to feel like that's not how it should be. You can be tempted to be fighting the change, complaining, no, 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 that's not what we agree, etc. But more often than not, the change is actually for the better of the business, and so fighting it isn't really wise, and you really just have to figure out ways to support the change and to build, keeping in mind that some of these things will change. And so what we'll basically be talking about is how to identify things that I call rules in requirements. When the requirement is given to be able to identify what the actual rule is in the requirement. More often than not, people don't tell you what the rule is and how something should work. They just describe to you how a particular variance of that rule works. And the problem is when you go and you build that particular variance, when another variance of the same rule comes in, you are typically forced to go and start rebuilding again. And that's because you didn't think deeply enough to understand what the actual rule is. Why do these changes happen? I mean, tons and tons of reasons. Business needs could change, customers' needs could change. We're all customers ourselves, and so we all know that our needs change all the time, right? So the same thing happens with customers who happen to use our products. One day they wake up one morning and they have this other new need, and it's basically a race between all the competing products on who can give it to them the quickest. Sometimes your partner's needs change. Sometimes you can get a call from your payment gateway that, oh, okay, this new thing has been added, or this is how this thing is going to work going forward, and you need to quickly scramble around to figure it out. And number four, the scariest one, regulatory needs change. Our guys at the top can just wake up any day and just say that, this is how this thing is going to work going forward. And as usual, they give you 1 or 2 weeks to get it done, and everybody will be scrambling. So the reality is, not a lot of this can be controlled. So you really just have to get used to it and figure out ways to work around it. So yeah, first and foremost, right, you can't prepare for every change. There are some that are going to hit you and you are going to have to start all over, right? However, there are some that you should be able to, especially from experience, you should be able to tell that this thing is likely to change. Even though this guy is beating his chest and telling me this is how this thing is, the chances are this thing is going to change in the future. And so you should be experienced product managers can typically look at a bunch of requirements and tell that that particular thing is likely to be a variable and not a constant. And if you have that mindset and experience, it will help you, it will save you a lot of trouble in the future. And I just want to, so today I'm just going to be sharing some of the techniques I use basically when building that helps me avoid the unnecessary hassles in the future. So there are two main things that I differentiate when I'm looking at requirements. One is the rule, and one is the instance of the rule. And the reality is, when you're engaging customers, more often than not, they will tell you the instance of the rule that applies to them, not what the underlying rule is in itself. And what's a rule? A rule is something that's always going to be true. This is how this thing is always going to work, right? This is how it's always going to work. I'll give you an example of a rule. If you want to transfer money from one person to the other, somebody is always going to be debit. There's always going to be a debit and there's always going to be a credit. That's the rule. How, if you ask me, for example, I will tell you, okay, I always transfer from my account to somebody else's account. And that's how I'll describe it to you. And that's an instance of the rule. If you ask the head of HR in my company, she'll tell you, well, she transfers from our account and it goes to multiple people's accounts. And that's her own instance of the rule. But the underlying rule is that there's going to be a debit and a credit, right? And that's what, if you want to build a system that works for everybody, that's what you need to do. You need to build a system that can debit somewhere and credit somewhere. Whether it's now crediting multiple places is another thing entirely. But if you only listen to the instance of the rule that Tobi described, you will not be able to cater for the head of HR. And so you, as a product manager, you need to be able to tell when something is a little high level or when someone is giving you a specific example of something. I'm back, but my slides are not back. Okay. So while this is an example and is most likely the most common example, there are several other ways that this thing can actually play out in real life. So I want to use a very common example, and an example that I actually ran into this week when I was talking to someone who was building a product. An example is payroll, right? And in engaging the different HR people that he was talking to, basically, they were all giving him the same kind of picture that you could already typically understand, right? The kind of picture you'll be able to predict. That, okay, all our employees have a salary. Salary is made up of basic housing, transport, and some other things. All our employees pay tax. All our employees pay pension. They pay 8%. We pay 10%. There are some other bonuses we give our employees. And when they receive those bonuses, we don't remove tax from it, etc. And the reality is, if he went on to build a solution that was exactly based on what they described, it would have worked for maybe 80% of the customers. But the problem would have arisen when basically one customer who comes, and unfortunately, they're usually like money, right? Who have another requirement that this system that this guy has figured out from his customer research is a little bit different from what it is, right? And so if you look at this, these are, in my opinion, a set of clear requirements. But so what I'm going to do now, however, is try to go deeper into it to say, okay, looking at these sets of requirements that I have here, let me try and identify what the actual rule is, which is the underlying rule that is always true, regardless of the scenario that comes up. Now, to me, here's what the instance is, right? This company basically needs a payroll system that will allow them to specify the breakdown of the salaries, housing, income, basic housing, transport, all of that stuff. It will automatically calculate the tax deductions as well. Okay, this tax is this percent, this tax is that percent, etc. Also do the same thing for pensions. And basically, even if you want to go a little further, you can allow you decide whether they want to pay tax, you can allow the company decide whether they want to pay pension, etc, etc. The truth is, if you build this, just as I said, right, you're going to cater for maybe 80% of the customers. But when I look at these requirements, especially in terms of payroll, this is what I see, which is, in my opinion, what the actual rule is, right? The real rule here is your salary is made up of a bunch of benefits and deductions. That's really all that there is to it. It doesn't matter what label you add to the benefit or what label you add to the deduction. The bottom line is there are benefits and there are deductions. Now, if you go a little bit further, the deductions apply on certain benefits. So pension applies on some certain benefits. Tax applies on some certain benefits, etc, etc. Now, the difference between building the rule and building a specific instance of the rule is this, right? Tomorrow, you walk up to, the rule allows you basically cater for every scenario. So tomorrow now, a new customer comes up and the customers pay, let's say NHF, which I deliberately left out, right? Now, the problem is if you have built the instance of the rule, you will go into another engineering sprint to say, okay, let's quickly add NHF deductions to our payroll system so that people can now pay for NHF. However, if what you had done initially is understand that, see, this whole payroll thing that looks so complicated is really just a bunch of benefits and deductions, right? And you build a system that basically allows the company either add benefits or add deductions. So it just so happens that one deduction is called tax. It just so happens that one deduction is called pensions. It means there is no deduction that any company in the entire world wants to pay. Bonus, whether they want to call it anything they like, car allowance, whatever the case may be. There's absolutely nothing that they want to add or subtract that they cannot do. Your system basically caters for any kind of addition or subtraction when it comes to the salary. So it doesn't matter whether government comes tomorrow, like they seem to have been coming for the past couple of months, and start saying, okay, there's this new tax that they need. They just gonna set it up. In fact, they don't even need to call you. And that's the difference between understanding what the rule is. The real rule when it comes to payroll is there are benefits and there are deductions, full stop. And anybody who is building a payroll system needs to build something that can allow people add benefits and add deductions. Once you do that, you have covered everything when it comes to coming up with the payroll. There may be a new feature that comes up, I can't think of any right now, but there may be something completely new. But if there's no company's payroll basically that you won't be able to take care of if you build for the role, which is there's going to be one benefit and there's going to be a bunch of deductions. If you don't have deductions, best company in the world. If you have 10 million deductions that you want to be deducting from the person's salary, please carry on. But basically, I've built my system such that no matter what happens, I can cater for it. This way, when any new scenario comes up from the business people, oh, this particular company said this particular company said that, you take care of it. Going a little bit further, because I just have 15 minutes, I don't want to go a bit further, but even in terms of what is being deducted, right? You shouldn't even be too harsh. You shouldn't be too rigid. If it was me that was building it, I wouldn't even be fixed in terms of what should be coming out. Because you'll be surprised, you go to some companies where basically as an advantage over other companies, they pay the whole 18% for the employee. And so you have built your system assuming that 8 will come from here and 10 will come from here, all of a sudden you have to start tweaking your system again. So as long as you know that, this rule, is that something must be added, which is a benefit, and something must be subtracted, which is a deduction. That's really what you should be building. And and if you build that, no matter what, there's absolutely no scenario that comes within the context of payroll specifically that you won't be able to take care of. So basically, right, there are several different examples that I could use, right? In fact, one of the ones that I tell all product managers is, as a rule of thumb, anything that has to do with how much you are charging, treat it as something that can change. You can trust me, almost 9 times out of 10, that thing is going to change. You guys can have a board meeting and you decide that, okay, we're releasing this new product and it's going to be 20 naira per request. You can rest assured that there's going to be one big company that will come and say, guys, I want 5 naira. And if you have built your system in a way in which everybody is being charged the same thing, you are the one that will run back to go and change it again. So as a rule of thumb, anything that has to do with how much your system is charging, just make sure that it is flexible enough to cater for different things for different customers. That one you can, even if I never had any presentation today, just take that one as a constant. That one is always going to be constant. Any product manager that has built a product that charges, we already know that that's how that thing always is, right? As someone who has built mobile banking apps, I can guarantee you again, I mean, there are several different examples, right? I'll walk into a meeting with the bankers, right? And they'll give me their list of accounts. Okay, this one is Flexi Kids account. The maximum amount of money you can put is this. The interest rate is this. This one is blah, blah, blah account. The maximum amount of interest is this, or the monthly interest is this. This is how much you can put. This is the limit etc. The reality is I don't typically listen when I'm in those kinds of interviews. And it's because I just sat down and I said, okay, you know what does a type of account, what are the properties of a type of an account, right? I say, okay, you know what, it has a name. They can name it whatever they like. It has an interest rate, okay. It has, it can be either fixed or not, meaning I can allow them debit it. I say, okay, all well and good. And it has a bunch of limits, how much you can remove on a daily basis, the maximum amount of money you can put into it, etc. And that's what I built into my system. So if you like, have Flexi Kids account, have Socialites account, have children's school, any kind of account that you have, right? My own work was just to build a solution that can allow you set up any kind of account. So if you like, come tomorrow, because that's how they always are. After sending me their whole list of accounts, and they'll call me in 2 weeks and be like, hey, there's this new account and the ED said you must have it by tomorrow. Okay, no problem. That's your, I mean, I already knew you were going to come with this anyway. So I already built a system in which I can set up any kind of accounts that you come up with. Or like, I mean, going back, like transfer pricing or transaction pricing. Oh, our POS solution, all merchants pay 0.2%. That's how it is until they sell POS to ShopRite. And then they come back to me and say, hey, please, ShopRite is not going to pay any charges. And I'll just be like, you know what? I already knew it. That's why I set up a system in which I can actually specify how much each customer is paying. Or if you're building like a savings or lending product, right? This one hits real close to home because I'm working on something very similar right now. And all the times my business analysts went out, they came back with the exact same thing. Oh, 30-day loan, X%, the customers will pay on a daily basis, like they're doing this, etc. But the reality is, me just looking at it, right? I said, okay, you know what? That's perfectly fine. So it's a 30-day loan. Customers will be paying daily. Okay, fine. And this is the interest rate. That's an instance, though. I'm almost 100% sure that in 2 months' time, you guys will come to me running, talking about how there's this great opportunity that we can't tap into because they want maybe a 90-day loan. So what do? I just built a system that basically allows you to specify how long a loan will be, what the interest will be, and basically how often the person will be paying. And so now, even if they come to me tomorrow and they say they want a 10-year loan where the customer will be paying every 3 years, the system is already there. If they come to me tomorrow running saying the daily payments don't work, they want weekly payments now, the system is already there. Whereas, if I was building it the way I would have built it maybe 9, 10 years ago, when they now come back to me and say, hey, gentlemen, please, we now need weekly loans, I would have started an emergency engineering sprint to say, okay, how do we change this thing from what it is right now to what it should be? So the reality is, if you look deeply enough at the requirements, you would typically be able to find what the actual rule is in most. I mean, again, so don't sit down racking your brain over every single requirement that comes in. There are some first of all, there are some changes that you can never have been ready for. You just have to go into it and just accept that that's one of the cons of being a product manager. It's just one of the thrills. You just have to enjoy it. But at the same time, when looking at the requirements, sometimes you should be able to see some certain things that, even though these people are telling me this thing and they are saying they're 100% right, this thing will most likely change in the future. Or looking at the requirements, say, okay, yeah, this is what this person is saying. But beyond what this person is actually saying, this is actually what this requirement is. It just so happens that what this guy is saying is one way in which the requirements could work. And there are like 10 or 100 different ways. And so rather than me building that one way that this guy has said this thing now, let me just build the system that can take care of any different type of way and save myself the problem in the future. So one of the rules that I usually say is you should spend your time building new features, right? Not new variations of a feature that you already built. Like, if you look deeply enough, you should be able to build a feature in a way that caters for a bunch of requirements, right? Regardless of the one that the guy is saying now or the one that can come up in the future. When the guy comes up to you and says, okay, we need this brand new thing, perfect. Even you and your engineering team, they will be excited to be building something new. But going back to tweak something that we built a while ago, especially over and over and over again, can even be detrimental to the morale of your team. So one of the things I always try to say is, how can I build this feature in a way in which I wouldn't have to come back to it, right? Except for something completely different. They just want to change one thing and I need to start a new sprint. It probably means you didn't think deep enough about how that feature should work. So basically, to summarize everything, when you get the requirements, try to look deeper into the requirements than the surface level gist that you typically get from customer research, and try to find what the actual rule is beyond what the customer is saying, beyond what your business people are saying. And once you have found that rule, that's exactly what you need to be building as a product manager. Don't build that's overly specific instance that they are giving to you. Build the actual rule that can take care of any instance, any time, any day, basically, and give yourself that peace of mind. So yeah, thank you very much. I think I overshot my time a little bit, but I hope you were able to learn something.
A lot. A whole lot. Thank you so very much, Tobi. That was awesome. Thank you. I'm trying to look through the chat to see if we have any questions. Okay. I have some, but so that I'm not totally selfish, I'll take this first one from Yinka Freeman. Yinka is asking, does this impact development time frame if the organization has multiple products?
So it could possibly affect the time frame. I'm not sure what the context products has to do with it, but even if you have only one product, right, it could potentially be a little longer. But if you think about it, from my own experience, certainly, it's not usually that much longer to the point where it becomes a problem. If you understand it properly enough, it is almost usually the same amount of time, to be honest, maybe maximum 1 week longer. And it's almost always worth it, because if you add up all the time that you now use when it comes to, oh, this new requirement has come and everybody's running helter skelter, and add up the stress, it's usually worth it in the long run. And so it's usually advisable to just do it like once and for all. And even if you don't, have it at the back of your mind that, okay, this thing is some depth that we're going to come back to. I think what the problem is not even knowing that that's what you should do in the first place, and then just building something that is so rigid that any small thing that changes now, all of you are running back into another emergency.
Thank you. Okay. Please send in your questions. If you're not able to log in here, like I said, you can share them and tweet at us at ProductTank. So I have one question, two actually, but I'll start with one while I wait. So, what would you say in your experience? What has triggered what has been the highest trigger for changes? Would you say it's competition? Would you say it's the users? Would you say it's your company thinking, oh, we're not going to make money from this thing, let's add this to it, or even entirely change the route we're taking to make money?
Frankly, it has been business, so I'll say customers, because I said it a bunch of times, but like that's usually what it is, right? There's always this one customer who probably has a lot of money and requires some changes to your system for you to be able to use it. And that's typically what is the most urgent change, because at that point, the CEO will sit down on everybody's neck and be like, man, I must collect this money, right, from this customer. So you engineering team, product team, go and sit down there and figure out how to get this requirement for this customer. So the most common one is usually a customer, a rich customer. The everyday customers, they kind of tell them, okay, you have it in 2 weeks. But the rich customer will give you guys timeline and everybody will be scrambling to meet it. So it's usually it's usually a customer in my experience.
Okay. I'll move on to the second one. I'll use Lagos as a typical example. So most of our tech companies here, where we have majority of the PMs, are fast-paced, growing, trying to raise funds, moving into different verticals to see which one is going to work, which one is eventually bring money. If you have like a main product, right, that is in the scale phase or like the growth phase, and some stakeholder or even the CEO comes and says, we have to change the direction of this. As a young product manager or someone who, innocently just walks in and you took this up, how would you handling that request from, say, your CEO?
Okay. So I'm managing a product. We're trying to grow it. We're trying to scale it. And then my guys at the top come and say, gentlemen, this is the new direction. So let me try to answer that question as a young product manager, right? Because maybe if I think about it now, I may be seeing it through glasses that are a little bit tinted. But at that age, at that stage, basically, in your career, you may have a shot at changing their minds, right? Like saying, okay, this is why I don't think this is what we should do. But the truth is, so the question is, do you have any allies, right? If you have, as a product manager, half of, if not more, most of our work is managing people, right? And you should typically have a stakeholder ally. I think that's the person that you should basically help you fight that battle. If you try as a young product manager to fight that battle, you're going to lose 9 times out of 10. But if you have a stakeholder ally that can help you take that conversation to rooms that you will not even be in when they are making those decisions, then that's the kind of person that you need to leverage on that kind of situation. So the job for you as a product manager, as a young product manager, is before this kind of problem happens, go and look for that your ally, right? And get him emotionally invested in the product so that he can help you in those kinds of battles. Because at that young age, you will not be able to, young stage, you will not be able to fight that battle yourself, quite frankly.
Awesome. There's a question here that says, Okay, I will rephrase this question. So this person wants to know, in all of the apps that you've built, can you give us examples of where someone has come to scatter everything for you in the middle of it, and how you were able to find your code?
Which one can I pick now without giving too much away? Okay, so I built the most recent thing I built was for loans, right? And it basically, so the first part was the example I gave, right, where I was told a specific type of loan. This is the type of loan we want to give. They told me, they beat their chest. They said, Toby, this is how it's going to be. Trust me. I said, okay, no problem now. And I built what I wanted to build, which is basically a system that will allow any type of loan to work, right? And of course, now, before I knew it, they called me. They said, Toby, come on. We went to this place and they said that type of loan cannot work. This is the new type of loan that can work. But Toby, it's super urgent. We need this thing like tomorrow. How can we get it done? Maybe you can just tweak this, tweak that. Tweak. Of course, because I'm not the nicest person, I pretended as if it was a lot of work. I said, why? We agreed now. Something. But I just went and I just set it up, knowing that I knew they were going to be coming back. Right. Another example that happened was in terms of how the customers pay. We already agreed a specific way that this is how the customers are going to be paying their money. But I also kind of knew that it could possibly change. So this one is a little less of a rule, but just knowing that this thing can change, right? And so the system was basically built in a way that I had already supported multiple ways for the customer to pay. That was another thing I was going to say in response to your other question, which is sometimes you just do some things as rogue projects. Nobody will know you're doing it and you just do it. I did that thing a lot, quite frankly, especially when you have the support of your product team. You do a bunch of rogue projects. They won't believe in it, but the truth is when they now see it, they will now thank you. I've gotten several promotions from rogue projects. I'll be very honest with you.
Take notes.
I'm very honest with you. Like, because I would, sometimes it's hard to visualize things when somebody is just using his mouth to tell you. So if you can get your engineers to sit down a bunch of Saturdays and in maybe 2 months of Saturdays, you guys release a new feature and then you can show them that, guys, see how this thing possibly works. Sometimes that also works as well. It has worked for me. I won't overly recommend it. I mean, you may need to look around the room and know if that's something that will be accepted where you work. But I have actually done that quite a lot and it has worked for me.
Another question that I have here from, I think, Papa. Okay, I'm not able to pronounce the name. In some instances, you do not support the requirement change that the business owner is bringing. You are close to like maybe the end of development. How do you communicate this? Okay, I get what the person trying to say is maybe you are close to the end of development and you want users to maybe first take the product and use, but the business owner is strong on changing requirements at the end. How do you handle this kind of situations?
I really believe in communication, right? Because typically this person that's telling you to change the requirements is a stakeholder, even in the one that you're about to finish, right? It's unlikely that the only thing that concerns him is this particular change, right? And so if you explain the impact of what's the, sometimes you just talk and you don't really know like what the impact of what you're saying actually is. You're just coming and saying, oh no, we need to do this now. Sometimes when you impact, it can typically help. Some people are dogged, but most people are reasonable. You can't assume that everybody is unreasonable. Most people are reasonable and it's more from a point of ignorance as anything. So when we're able to explain that, come see this other feature that we're working on. If you disrupt what we're doing now, not only will we have to restart this one, even this one that we have almost finished, we won't have it. So we're basically like, we're basically like, that's literally the worst scenario. So just chill. Let's finish this one. Immediately we finish this one, trust me, we're going to pick this up. Sometimes they don't see it that way, but more often than not, if you communicate it effectively, it will work. One of the things I do the most is what I just said now. See, Chief, if you say we should drop this one, come and carry this one. Literally, we will not have either because I would have dropped the one that I've almost finished I'll start another journey again. That one that is almost finished will be almost finished. And this one will now start it over again. God knows what you come and say in another 2 weeks again. So typically when you communicate, it typically helps. One of the things is sometimes we are too defensive. We just say, no, we can't do it. And then the whole thing becomes an argument.
Okay. And would you say that if, I think the slide before the last one said we should look deeper, ask more questions. Do you feel like when tech companies are growing these days, you have that much time to try to answer all the questions? You want to follow framework, you're asking all the 5 whys, you're trying to do due diligence. Do you think the rate at which we are growing and moving, we really have time to ask all those questions before running into development and trying to at least do something?
So, frankly, I'm a firm believer in what's that saying that you jump and then you're building the plane as you go down, right? Yeah. I'm not a very huge fan of I want to sit down, I want to go and be talking to customers. No building is happening. I'm not a firm believer in that. I do believe that you can do both to a large extent. The question is whether your team is built in a way that can allow you to do both efficiently. But I do believe that even as you are building, you can, still be engaging the customers even more and more to figure out exactly what needs to be built. Because you cannot, it's usually too expensive to go maybe for 2 weeks, come back inside and then just sit down and believe, oh, I've known everything, let's start building. Even as you are building, you need to be sending the thing out for them. That's one of the, these are agile. A lot of us have different definitions of it, right? One of the main things about agile is you need to constantly be giving the customers something to use so that they can be giving you feedback immediately. But what we do is we'll sit down outside, we'll ask them questions with our lovely questionnaires, and then we'll come back inside and build. So, but nobody is seeing anything at the end of the sprint, which is totally against what agile is supposed to be. So I believe you can be building, but you can still be asking questions. And I don't even think you have a choice because it will be very expensive if you have finished building and then all of a sudden you take it to the customer and the customer says, no, I didn't notice what you meant by that, your question, right? So I do think like they're not mutually exclusive. You can be building what you know, but still be engaging with the customers to continue to refine what they want so that you can identify, okay, these are all the similarities, right? This is what needs to be built actually, and this will just allow me to cater for every single one of them.
Okay. There are no more questions. I guess it's because of the rain. People are afraid to drop their questions. What's going on?
I will say be a sweet talker, even though sweet talking is a very, very good soft skill to have.
Okay, I have one more. Fantastic. I didn't want to be selfish, but then I will ask all my questions now. In a case where you are, let's say you are in B2B, right, and you're building an enterprise product. Okay, so you have different businesses. That is, you have different businesses. that is products catered to. There's this one company that when you tell them, okay, if you turn on feature A, B, C, your customers can do X, Y, Z, they take it. But then there's this customer that wants to keep tweaking, keep doing. You've already told them, oh, this is what you're going to build for like the next 3 months. This is the advantage you're going to get from it. This is what the output will be. Eventually, this is the impact. But then they keep tweaking, and then you're trying to build similar features for both companies. How do you handle that type of changing requirements when it comes to doing B2B?
So, I mean, as someone that's done B2B and B2C, I actually do this B2B. I'll be very honest with you, right? Because there's always that one guy that you just described who is always tweaking. Hopefully, they're even like well-paying customers, right? So that it's even worth the wahala. But I mean, it really depends, right? It would be very difficult to give one universal answer because there are things that they would tweak that. When you even see what they are tweaking, right, you'll be able to figure out how to build it in such a way that they can just go and be tweaking it by themselves, and you leave them alone. Often my goal is to build this in a way in which when they want to tweak, they should not come and meet me. Like, I want to give them. However, again, I have to tell you as a product manager that is also a business person. If they pay you per feature, then don't allow them know they can tweak it too, so that they can come back to you and you can collect stuff. But anyway, that was just a joke. But yeah, it's hard to give a universal answer because some of it that we are just calling tweaking maybe something completely new that you need to build, right?
Exactly.
But some of it may also be, if you look at it critically enough, you can say, okay, this is what these people are always playing with. Let me just give them something that they can now decide for themselves how to use it. So, in fact, one of this thing that you're saying, literally, I learned it in a bank, working for a bank, right? Where they kept on coming to me, okay, now we want this account to be able to do like this. Now we want this account. So what I just did is I built a system that allows them to decide how an account should work. The day they say they want the limits to be like this, they go and set it by themselves. The day they say they want KYC requirement to no longer include BVN, they go and remove it by themselves. It took me a lot of hard work. And to go back to the question that the guy asked initially, it took far longer than if their requirements were super clear. Because now I'm basically building something that you can use to build by yourself as against a particular specific set of requirements. So it took longer, but the reality is when I was done, I was done. I didn't hear from them again. Anything they wanted, they went and picked it by themselves. Real, as requirements were clear. But left to me, right? And sometimes I've been straight with some customers. When they come and say tweak the SSC, this works. I beg, like, I can't. I've tweaked this one for you. I've tweaked this one for you. This thing is not a bespoke. Is it a bespoke platform? It's probably not, right? It's a platform that multiple people are using. So if it's not bespoke, you can't come and be asking for like customization here, customization there. But again, you can't tell all the customers now. There are some customers that when you look at how much you're making from them, you probably have to do it. So, as I said before I went on this huge rant, it really depends, right? It's difficult to give a universal answer. Some you should be able to build it in a way in which they can do it themselves. Some, every time they tweak, you have to go and enter inside another sprint and start doing it for them. So it's difficult to give one answer that just caters for everybody.
I think we have our final wrapping up. The next says, if there was one advice you had for a PM newbie, what would that be?
I mean, okay. The advice I would give to a new PM is not to don't get too stuck in what already is. And I'll explain what I mean, right? There's the temptation to when finding out how something works, right? People will always explain to you how it currently works. However, as a product manager, you're trying to build how it works, but you're also trying to improve on it. And one of the things that I see with new PMs is they basically take instructions, which is not what you're supposed to do as a product manager, right?
Okay.
Because no, seriously, that's not really what you do. Like, you can't go to the customer and the customer says, this is how this thing works. And that's exactly what you build, right? Because more often than not, people get used to something that is inefficient. But that's what they're used to. They're already used to that inefficiency. They don't even know that it's inefficient. But you should also always have that new thought process to it. To say, okay, this is what this person said. But let me now apply my see better ways. And that's what my advice would be. I spent a lot of years being a project manager, and that's what I call the people who take instructions, right? They will just give you one long BRG like this, and you just sit on the ideas and keep on building.
Yeah.
Whereas you should, as a product manager, be a creative. You should be able to look at it and say, no, come, let's try this thing this other way. Don't get stuck in just taking instructions and building what people are telling you exactly how they tell you. apply your own creative. It's to even like help you enjoy it more. You feel more fulfilled about it.
I have
Did you ever,
to,
sorry, go on.
huh? Yeah,
You were
I have
saying
something to add to that. So I agree with you that with most new PMs, they want to quickly build and they want to listen to their stakeholders. And a lot of times I say, see, your stakeholder, even if your stakeholder used to be a PM, is working in whatever business unit he's working in now, or an engineer, listen to what he has to say. Sometimes building a feature or even technology may not be the solution to what that person is, right? It may just be letting them do what they're currently doing differently. But think about it deeply, understand what his current process is, and then you're even able to help that person a lot more better than just say,
exactly.
okay, we're currently trying to use pencil to draw on a blackboard. It's not drawing.
Exactly.
Build me a pencil that can draw on a blackboard. Like, please.
It helps you move up quickly. I'll be very honest with you. Because when the person tells you, use the pencil to draw on the blackboard, and then you come with chalk, the guy will be like, wow, chalk. Why didn't I take that?
Exactly.
Whereas the product manager that gave him his pencil, he will thank him, oh, okay, thank you for the pencil, and he'll continue struggling without knowing he's struggling. So it even helps you move up quickly.
I have another question that says, did you ever worry about your products being bloated?
Yes, all the time. But yes, absolutely all the time. But the reality is, you if you are building flexibility into a core function, you never have to worry about it, right? Unless you are building things where that you are not sure will be needed. So they're two separate things, right? You can be sitting now as a product manager. You don't know that this feature will ever be needed, but you're just like, what will happen if once you start going down, what will happen if that road? You're likely to do things that people will not use. That's just the honest truth. What I'm talking about is not what will happen if it is. See, you know that this thing must absolutely be used. What you are doing is building it a way in which anyhow that they want to use it, they can use it. If they never use it more ways than one, fine, perfect, awesome. More often than not, that's not going to be true. But I'm not. That's completely different from just sitting down daydreaming about different features and just building things that people may never ever click on. So yeah.
Okay. Tobi, is it ever a bad idea to patch or use quick fixes when building or evolving products?
Absolutely not. It's more often than not, it's a fantastic idea. The reality is just keep a list and know that I patched something there because all people patch and it's just a list or it's just a bunch of patches. It's an absolute necessity to patch. That's the truth. Sometimes you just have to do it. Don't make it a habit. Have a list that okay, I patch there. So that can even help the person that collects the product from you eventually.
Exactly. Keep updating your documentation. Like I always say, in case anything goes, you are very God forbid like people, but anything can happen at any point in time, right? Let whoever is inheriting that product not be swearing for you. You documented every single thing.
Literally, I've sworn and I've been sworn for. So I know.
There's a question from Miriam here. She says, what will you advise someone that gets overwhelmed with the whole process as a newbie? Welcome.
I mean, the truth is, we're all overwhelmed at some point, right? I find things like this helpful, things like this event, right? Where you can vent and get things off your chest, and also where you can talk to people and they can basically give you their own like experiences, right? It's like an AA meeting for product managers because most of us get overwhelmed eventually. So, I mean, just know that is a phase. I mean, is a phase. You would number one, you get used to it, and number two, you get better at it, and which is probably most important, managing the different people that are leading to this feeling of being overwhelmed. But trust me, every single one of us went through that phase where we were like, why are we even doing this? As in, kind of what is this? But
Sure.
typically, that's what I can say. It will pass, and you'll be better for it. Trust me.
Thank you. Final question, and we're rounding up. Usaya is saying, how do changing business goals affect an evolving product?
Yeah, they basically they affect it in every way possible, right? Because ultimately, you are building a product to meet business goals, right? That's the relationship between the product and the business. That's the relationship between the product and the goals. You are not building it because you want to find out about a new programming language. You are building the product to meet the business goal. So if the business goals change, that product will probably need to change to meet those business goals. So that's the relationship. And as long as one is changing, the product will have to change. It answers that question. I think there's more to that question, but just answering what I'm reading. Mainly the business goals change. You can expect that the product will change without a shadow of doubt. And it's not malicious. It's because we want to meet the new goals. It is what it is.
Awesome. A final thing I'd like to say to wrap it up. I think I picked this from maybe the last time we spoke. As the requirements keep changing, one thing you need to continuously ask yourself is, what is my user getting out of it? Or if the user may not be your focus while you're building, what is business getting out of it? And if these people are not thinking of it, you really need to, check yourself to see if you're really focused on what the goal is for that product. Thank you very much, Toby. I know we've spoken with us twice this year. I hope that if we call you again, you'll honor the invite. Thank you so much. It's been please, Toby, honor our invite because we're coming again. We will not stretch again this year, but definitely next year. We will call.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right then. Thank you everyone for joining. If you have questions and you were not able to share, please share with us at ProductTank on Twitter. We are also on LinkedIn. Please drop us a message, inbox, anything. I'm also available. You can follow Tobi on LinkedIn because we know the situation with the other social media, right? If you have questions, share them with him. He'll be happy to answer. Our next event is on 7th of October. We will keep you updated as we move towards 7th of October. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Tobi. Have a good evening. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.